Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, committee members. For the record, Mark Johnson, State Representative from House District 52. One of the reasons that I'm actually a legislator today has to do with the fact that I'm also a member of a school board. I've served on the Hood River County School Board for almost 8 full years now, and in fact, just in the process of throwing my hat in the ring for another 4-year term, believe it or not, but which I know.
Didn't we talk?
That was my wife's reaction, Representative. But one of the reasons why I ran for the legislature was because as a board member, I've been on the receiving end of some policies that have come from this building that I would say have been less than well informed by what life really is like on the front lines. And I would equate that the K-12 level and K-12 board involvement really is the front lines of education and education reform as we move forward. And that has been very effective for me. It's been very helpful for me as a legislator, I think, to be able then to work within this environment to try to provide input and advice to all of us as policymakers about, what really is workable and what may not be a very effective way to go. It was especially, I think, useful in our last session beginning in 2011. As we worked with the governor and with others to put together some really major reforms, and I'm proud of what we were able to do. An example of this sort of hands-on interaction, if you will, was, you recall that in 2011, Senator Hass had a bill on the Senate side to call for all-day kindergarten, which I think a lot of us agree with that concept. It's wonderful for students. The data is undeniable that it's great for kids and achievement and so forth. And his bill, in its initial form, as it was heard, simply said, by the year, and I forget what it was, 2015, I think, school districts shall offer all-day kindergarten, and then we obviously as a state would find out a way to fund that, and that's a different topic. But I went to the senator and said, Senator, I agree totally with the concept. It's wonderful. All-day K works. We know that. The data is clear. It's convincing. But don't make it a mandatory thing. Say, if you do agree to offer all-day kindergarten, the state will then reimburse you for that other half that they don't currently now. That takes the pressure off boards at the local level to have to deal with another unfunded mandate. Most boards are going to find a way to get there anyway because their communities are going to say, gosh, we've got this great benefit now. Let's figure out a way. Maybe we can go past that bond to fund this or whatever. But it puts it into lets the school board to make that decision about what's in their best interest rather than the state telling them how to operate. So that's an example how it's been effective for me to be able to provide that sort of input. In the 2012 session, the legislature passed one of the most landmark legislative reforms, I think, in the last long time in Oregon's history, Senate Bill 1581, which put in place the Chief Education Officer, put in place the Oregon Education Investment Board, created the whole Achievement Compact framework, and many of you were here to be a part of that process. And it established the Oregon Education Investment Board, okay, which is a 12-member board appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. And the purpose of the OEIB is to oversee the whole P20 continuum of public education and be able to make recommendations to this body about strategic investments in order to continue to improve public education in Oregon and to help us all achieve the aspirational goal of 40-40-20. And the criteria of the bill, or of the selection process, is clearly spelled out in Senate Bill 1581, but the language is also found here in the bill before you in Senate Bill 2538. But what we're asking, the ask of Senate Bill or House Bill 2538 is simply to make a very small change and to change the numbers of members on the OEIB from 12 to 13 and to make that additional member a member of a locally elected school board. Because I believe that that perspective is something that's lacking, and honestly, had we been thinking, I think, back in 2012, I think there's perhaps a good likelihood that we could have had a school board member on the OEIB at that point in time. But I really believe it's vitally important that this board, as they make decisions about what's attainable, what's practicable, what's achievable within the public education realm, have input and have advice from a school board member as well, because as I said earlier, I really believe that school boards are the front line of education reform in Oregon. If you'll turn to the front, to page 1 of the bill, looking down in sub 1 under section 1, It says that the Oregon Education Investment Board is established for the purpose of ensuring that all public school students in this state reach the education outcomes established for the state. The board shall accomplish this goal by overseeing a unified public education system that begins with early childhood services and continues through public education from kindergarten to post-secondary education. My assertion would be that that point between early childhood and post-secondary education is the K-12 environment. It really is what holds together the entire system. On the one hand, you're taking these students that are getting enriched now with an extra focus on early childhood, and we're passing them off successfully trained to be successful, ready for the job market as well as for higher ed. They're the bridge. So it makes sense to me that we would want to represent that significant portion of our public education system in this body, in this board that's going to have this great opportunity. And a part of Senate Bill 1581 that was passed in 2012 also adds extra responsibilities onto school districts. School boards are now responsible for things they never have been in the past. Achievement compacts between the OEIB and the school boards now are in place, but the buck stops with the school boards. They are the ones accountable for the performance. They're the ones accountable for setting goals and making sure that they achieve those goals. They're also responsible now for successful implementation of Senate Bill 290, which I believe is going to transform our educator evaluation systems across the state as well. So as we have added on, as we have set down this reform, set pathway to reform, we're expecting more of our school boards. It really seems likely to me and beneficial to the state if we also allow them to help inform the process as we go forward, so they can report back to us about how is this working? Is this attainable? Are these new goals, are these new regulations something that can be dealt with, or should we modify them? So Madam Chair, that is my reason for believing that House Bill 2538 would be a good piece of legislation. I think it would really help our whole public education system in Oregon. And with that, I'll be done and take any questions you might have.